The crystalline amphitheater of the Galactic Academy hummed with nervous energy. As hundreds of cadets gathered for pairing week, holographic displays flickered overhead, showing compatibility matrices and neural sync readings that would determine partnerships for the next 4 years of training. T-Vira Sindel sat alone in the upper tiers, her pale blue fingers tracing anxious patterns on her uniform sleeve. Her red curls caught the artificial starlight streaming through the dome's transparent ceiling, a vibrant contrast to her increasingly pallid complexion. Around her, excited chatter filled the air as students from dozens of worlds discussed their potential matches. She had stopped listening hours ago. Next grouping, advanced combat pairing. Sector 7, announced Commander Voss, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. T-Vira's stomach clenched. This was her final chance, her fourth and last attempt at finding a compatible partner. She descended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing her growing dread. Other students moved with purpose and confidence, their biosignatures already glowing softly as their internal linking systems activated in anticipation. T-Vira's remained stubbornly dim, the neural pathways damaged from the accident 3 years prior still refusing to fully respond. The linking platform materialized in the center of the arena, its surface covered in thousands of connection nodes that would facilitate the mental bridging process. Students began pairing off with practiced ease. A tall Andromedian cadet with green-tinted skin linked seamlessly with a petite Terran woman, their combined aura pulsing golden. A hulking Garaxian warrior found harmony with a wispy Celestini, their unlikely partnership creating beautiful silver spirals of synchronized thought. T-Vira stepped onto the platform and waited. Instructor Kellen, a stern Vulcanoid with piercing yellow eyes, approached with his data pad. Cadet Sindel, we have several remaining candidates who might. I'll try, interrupted Jackson Vale, a promising Altarian student known for his perfect sync scores. He approached T-Vira with confident strides. Placing his hand on the nearest connection node, T-Vira pressed her palm to the adjacent node, closing her eyes and reaching deep within herself for the mental pathways that had once come so naturally. For a moment, she felt the familiar tingling sensation of an approaching link, the gentle probe of Jackson's consciousness touching the edge of hers. Then came the static, the jarring disconnect that felt like being plunged into ice water. Jackson jerked his hand away with a sharp intake of breath, shaking his head. I can't, there's something wrong with her neural patterns, he muttered, stepping back. It's like trying to link with a broken transmitter. Murmurs rippled through the watching crowd. T-Vira kept her eyes downcast, her cheeks burning with humiliation that surely showed through her pale blue skin. 2 more attempts followed. Kira Frost, a top-ranked human cadet, managed to hold the connection for nearly 30 seconds before the feedback became too overwhelming. Then Drix Theron, whose species was known for their adaptable linking abilities, couldn't even establish initial contact. Perhaps we should consider alternative placements, Instructor Kellen suggested gently, though his words carried the weight of finality. The support division has excellent opportunities for independent study. T-Vira nodded numbly. She had known this day would come eventually. The Selnari valued perfect harmony above all else, and she was living proof that some things, once broken, could never be fully repaired. As the other students continued their successful pairings around her, she stood alone on the platform, visible to everyone, yet completely unseen. The accident had taken more than just her flawless neural pathways. It had taken her future, her place among her people, and now, it seemed, her last chance at belonging anywhere at all. The transport shuttle's engines still hummed as Leo Grant stepped into the Academy's main corridor, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a worn leather jacket that clearly violated dress code draped over the other. His dark hair was disheveled from the long journey, and stubble shadowed his jaw, a stark contrast to the immaculately groomed cadets flowing around him. You're late, Commander Voss observed as Leo approached the registration desk, his tone carrying mild disapproval. Traffic was murder in the Centauri sector, Leo replied with a crooked grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Something about a diplomatic convoy. The commander's expression remained stoic as he handed Leo a data pad. Pairing ceremonies conclude. In 2 hours, you'll need to review the available candidates and make your selection quickly. Leo scrolled through the profiles, his calloused fingers moving across the holographic display. Elite students from across the galaxy stared back at him. Perfect test scores, flawless psychological evaluations, impressive family lineages. He paused at one entry that seemed oddly sparse. Tivira Sindel. He read aloud. Selnari. Former top percentile, now unassigned. He looked up at the commander. What's her story? Neural damage from a training accident, Voss replied curtly. She's attempted multiple pairings this week, all unsuccessful. I'd recommend focusing on candidates with proven compatibility ratings. Leo's jaw tightened. He'd heard that tone before, the dismissive certainty that some people were simply beyond help. Where is she now? Cadet Sindel should be in meditation. Chamber 7. But I strongly advise. Leo was already walking away. He found her sitting cross-legged on the chamber's cushioned floor, her back straight despite the defeat written in every line of her posture. The red curls that had caught his attention in her profile photo fell like a curtain around her face, and her pale blue skin seemed almost translucent in the soft lighting. Tivira, he said softly. She looked up, and Leo felt something shift in his chest. Her eyes were the color of deep ocean storms, beautiful and haunted. You must be looking for someone else, she said, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of the Selnari. The pairing ceremonies are in the main hall. Actually, I was looking for you. He settled onto the cushion across from her, noting how she tensed at his proximity. I'm Leo Grant, just transferred in from the outer colonies. I know who you are, she replied, though her tone suggested she wasn't particularly impressed. The human with the unusual background. What do you want? To ask if you'd consider partnering with me. Tivira's eyes widened, and for a moment, the mask of resignation slipped to reveal something raw and vulnerable. You don't understand. I can't link properly. My neural pathways were damaged in an accident, and the connection is broken, painful for the other person. What kind of accident? Leo asked, and when she flinched, he held up a hand. Sorry. You don't have to tell me, but I've read your file, what little there is of it. Your scores before the accident were incredible. That was before, she said, bitterly. Now I'm just a liability. Leo leaned forward slightly. Look, I'm not exactly academy material myself. Grew up on mining stations. Never had formal training until 6 months ago. Maybe we're both long shots, but that doesn't mean we can't make it work. Tivira stared at him for a long moment. Why would you risk your career for someone you don't even know? Because everyone deserves a chance, he said simply. And because sometimes the best partnerships aren't the perfect ones, they're the ones where people choose each other anyway. Something flickered in her expression. Hope, maybe. Or just the faintest possibility of it. The instructors will try to talk you out of it. Let them try. An hour later, they stood together on the linking platform while Commander Voss and 3 other instructors voiced their concerns in increasingly urgent tones. Leo ignored them all. His attention focused entirely on the woman beside him. Are you sure about this? Tivira whispered. Never been more sure of anything, he replied, placing his hand on the connection node. Tivira hesitated for just a moment before pressing her palm to the adjacent node. Leo felt the initial probe of her consciousness, tentative, almost fearful. Then came the static she'd warned him about, the jagged edges of damaged neural pathways scraping against his mind. But underneath the chaos, he sensed something else, a melody, broken but still beautiful, the essence of who she was beneath the scars. Instead of pulling away, Leo leaned into the connection, letting his own mental barriers drop. He felt her surprise as his consciousness wrapped around the damaged areas of hers, not trying to fix them but simply accepting them as part of her. The platform's display flickered, not the steady golden glow of a perfect match, but something more complex. Amber and silver threads wound together in an intricate pattern that pulsed with irregular but genuine rhythm. Pairing accepted, the system announced, and the watching crowd fell silent. Tivira's eyes were wide with wonder and disbelief. I can feel you, she whispered. I can feel you too, Leo replied, his voice rough with emotion. All of you, for the first time in 3 years. T-Vira really smiled, and Leo knew he'd made the right choice. 3 weeks into their partnership, Leo was beginning to understand the true extent of T-Vira's isolation. She moved through the academy like a ghost, keeping to the edges of crowds, speaking only when directly addressed. During their combat training sessions, she was technically proficient but held back, as if afraid that pushing too hard might shatter their fragile connection. "You're not going to break me," Leo said one evening as they practiced synchronization exercises in the empty training bay. Sweat gleamed on his forehead from their recent sparring match, and T-Vira's usually perfect posture showed signs of fatigue. "You don't know that," she replied, her breathing slightly labored. "The last time I pushed too hard during a link, my partner ended up in the medical bay for 3 days. Leo moved closer, noting how she instinctively stepped back. "That was 3 years ago, right? During your accident?" T-Vira's face went carefully blank. "I don't talk about that." "Maybe you should." Leo kept his voice gentle but persistent. "We're supposed to be partners, T-Vira. That means trusting each other." With more than just combat formations, she turned away, her red curls catching the overhead lights. "Trust isn't something that comes easily to me anymore, I've noticed." Leo settled onto the training mat, patting the space beside him. "Come on, sit with me for a minute." After a moment's hesitation, T-Vira joined him, careful to maintain distance. Between them, the training bay was quiet except for the distant hum of the Academy's life support systems. "I grew up on Kepler Station," Leo said, staring up at the simulated stars projected on the ceiling. "Mining operation on the edge of nowhere. My parents died in a reactor accident when I was 12. T-Vira's sharp intake of breath made him look at her. Her storm gray eyes had softened with sympathy. "I spent the next 6 years bouncing between foster families who saw me as either cheap labor or a burden," he continued. "Learned pretty early that trusting people was a luxury I couldn't afford. When the Academy Scouts found me, I almost didn't come. Figured I'd just disappoint everyone eventually. But you did come." She said softly, "Yeah, because I was tired of being afraid." He turned to face her fully. "And because sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all." T-Vira was quiet for a long moment, her fingers playing nervously with the hem of her training shirt. "The accident," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was during advanced neural linking class. My partner was Iran Vastus, the top student in our year. We were attempting a deep sync, something most cadets don't try until their final semester." Leo waited, sensing the difficulty of these words for her. "I don't know what went wrong. One moment we were linked perfectly, and the next." She shuddered. It was like a feedback loop. All of his emotions, his thoughts, his pain, it all flooded into me at once. And mine into him. We couldn't disconnect. The instructors had to use neural dampeners to separate us. What happened to him? Coma for 2 weeks. When he woke up, he couldn't remember his own name for days." T-Vira's voice cracked. "The neural pathways in my brain were fried trying to process the overload. They healed, but not properly. Not enough for a normal link." Leo reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he covered her hand with his. "It wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" She looked at him with eyes full of old pain. "I pushed for the deep sink. I wanted to prove I was the best. My arrogance nearly destroyed both of us. You were a student trying to excel. That's what students do." Leo's thumb traced gentle circles on her knuckles. "The instructors should never have allowed such an advanced technique. Without proper safeguards." T-Vira stared down at their joined hands. "My people, the Salnari, believe that everything happens in perfect harmony, that the universe has a natural order, and disrupting that order brings chaos. After the accident, they saw me as a walking disruption, a reminder that their perfect society could produce something flawed. Their loss," Leo said firmly, "and their stupidity, despite herself." T-Vira smiled. "You're very certain about that." "I'm certain about you." Leo lifted their joined hands, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I've felt your mind, T-Vira. The damaged parts, yes, but also the incredible parts. Your compassion, your strength, your fierce loyalty. You're not broken, you're just different." T-Vira's breath caught as Leo leaned closer, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. Her skin was warm despite its pale blue hue, and he could feel the rapid pulse at her throat. "Leo," she whispered, uncertainty and longing warring in her voice. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his lips inches from hers. Instead, she closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if she was afraid she might somehow hurt him, even in this. But as Leo responded with gentle enthusiasm, Tivira melted into him, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Tivira's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but for once, they seemed to be tears of joy rather than pain. "I never thought," she began. "Neither did I," Leo admitted, his forehead resting against hers. "But I'm glad we're figuring it out together." As they sat there in the quiet training bay, Tivira allowed herself to believe, for the first time in 3 years, that maybe she wasn't as broken as everyone thought. The alert klaxon pierced the pre-dawn quiet of the academy dormitories, jolting Leo from a deep sleep. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in harsh red as cadets stumbled from their rooms, pulling on uniforms and equipment harnesses. "All senior pairing teams report to Hangar Bay 7 immediately." Commander Voss's voice echoed through the calm system. "This is not a drill." Leo found Tivira already suited up in the corridor, her red hair pulled back in a tight braid and her expression focused. Over the past month, she had grown more confident in their partnership, but he could still see traces of the old uncertainty in the set of her shoulders. "Any idea what this is about?" he asked, falling into step beside her. "Probably the Nereid simulation," she replied, checking her equipment one final time. "Advanced rescue scenario. Most teams don't attempt it until their second year." The hangar buzzed with nervous energy as 20 paired teams assembled before a massive holographic display showing a derelict space station spinning slowly. Against a backdrop of stars, Commander Voss stood at attention, flanked by 3 other senior instructors. "Ladies and gentlemen," the commander began, his voice cutting through the chatter. "3 hours ago, we received a distress signal from mining station Nereid 7. A cascade failure has left the facility without power, life support failing, and 43 crew members trapped in the lower levels." The hologram zoomed in, revealing a twisted maze of corridors and collapsed sections. "This is the real thing," Voss continued. 10 pairing teams will be selected for the rescue mission. Selection will be based on your performance in the following simulation. Leo felt Tivira tense beside him. Simulation or not, this was exactly the kind of high-pressure scenario that could expose the limitations of their unconventional link. "Grant and Sindel," Instructor Wraith called out, consulting her data pad. "Team 7, you'll be attempting the Western Corridor approach." As they moved toward their assigned simulation pod, Leo caught the whispered comments from other cadets. "Why are they even here? Everyone knows her link is unstable. He's going to get them both killed." Tivira's steps faltered, and Leo felt her confidence wavering through their connection. He caught her arm gently. "Hey," he said quietly, "remember what we practiced. We don't need to be perfect, we just need to be us." She nodded, but her hands were trembling as they entered the simulation chamber. The pod materialized around them, creating a perfect replica of the damaged station's corridors. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, and the artificial gravity generators created an unsettling sense of vertigo. Through the transparent walls of the pod, they could see other teams beginning their attempts. 2 civilians trapped in Section 100-7, the computer announced. Structural integrity at 30% and falling. Estimated time until complete collapse, 12 minutes. Leo felt Tivira reach for their link, her consciousness touching his with practiced familiarity. But instead of the smooth synchronization other teams achieved, their connection crackled with the familiar static of her damaged neural pathways. "I can't get a clear read on the structural weak points," she said, frustration bleeding through their bond. "The interference is too strong." Round them, the simulation began in earnest. They had to navigate through debris fields, bypass damaged bulkheads, and coordinate their movements precisely to avoid triggering further collapses. Other teams moved with fluid grace, their links allowing them to anticipate each other's actions perfectly. Leo and Tivira stumbled left, T-Vira called out, but the static in their connection garbled the message. Leo went right, and they collided with a piece of floating debris that sent them spinning. 6 minutes remaining. The computer announced cheerfully. Through the pod's transparent walls, Leo could see Instructor Kellen shaking his head in disappointment. Commander Voss was making notes on his data pad, and Leo had a sinking feeling about what those notes contained. "We're not going to make it," T-Vira said, her voice thick with defeat. "I'm holding you back. You should have partnered with someone else." "Stop," Leo said firmly, grabbing her shoulders and forcing her to look at him. "Stop blaming yourself for something that isn't your fault." "But the simulation, forget the simulation for a second. Look at me." Leo's voice was intense, urgent. "Our link isn't like theirs. It's not smooth or perfect, but it's real, T-Vira. When you're scared, I feel it. When I'm determined, you feel it. We don't need perfect synchronization, we need to trust each other." T-Vira's eyes searched his face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying stop trying to link like everyone else and start linking like us. Instead of reaching for the traditional mental connection." Leo simply opened himself to her completely, not just his thoughts and reactions, but his absolute faith in her abilities, his certainty that they could succeed together, his growing feelings for her that went far beyond partnership. T-Vira gasped as the emotions flooded through their bond. Not the clean, organized data stream of a perfect link, but something raw and more powerful. She felt his trust in her like a physical force, his belief in their partnership unwavering despite the chaos around them. For minutes remaining, this time when T-Vira reached out with her consciousness, she didn't try to force a perfect connection. Instead, she let herself feel Leo's presence fully, his quick, tactical mind, his stubborn determination, his absolute refusal to give up on her. They moved together then, not with the fluid grace of other teams, but with something more powerful, complete trust. When T-Vira couldn't sense a structural weakness clearly, Leo trusted her instincts anyway. When Leo made a split-second decision to cut through a damaged bulkhead, T-Vira followed without hesitation. "Civilians located," the computer announced. As they reached the trapped crew members, 2 minutes to extract. The rescue went smoothly, their unconventional teamwork finally finding its rhythm. As they guided the simulated civilians to safety, Leo felt T-Vira's amazement through their bond, not just at their success, but at the realization that their different kind of link might actually be a strength rather than a weakness. Simulation complete. Time, 11 minutes, 37 seconds. As they exited the pod, they found Commander Voss waiting for them, his expression unreadable. "Unconventional approach," he said simply, "but effective. Does that mean?" Leo began. "It means you're on the rescue team," Voss replied. "All 20 teams will be going. We'll need every pair we can get." As the commander walked away, T-Vira turned to Leo, her eyes bright with excitement and something deeper. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," he agreed, pulling her into his arms. When he kissed her this time, it was with the passion of someone who had just watched his partner prove herself to the world. And when she kissed him back, it was with the gratitude of someone who had finally found where she belonged. The real Nereid 7 was even more damaged than the simulation had suggested. As their transport shuttle docked with the crippled mining station, Leo could see through the viewport that entire sections had been torn away by the cascade failure. The remaining structure groaned and shifted ominously, held together by emergency force fields that flickered with unstable energy. "Teams 7 through 10, you're taking the lower sectors," Commander Voss announced over the comm. "Structural integrity is compromised, so watch your footing. And remember, 43 lives depend on getting this right." T-Vira checked her environmental suit seals one final time, her movements precise despite the nervous energy Leo could feel radiating through their link. They had spent the 3-hour journey from the academy in final preparations, running through contingency plans and backup protocols. "Ready?" Leo asked, his voice slightly muffled by his helmet comm. "Ready," she replied, and for the first time since he'd known her, she sounded completely certain. They made their way through the station's twisted corridors, following the emergency lighting toward the lower levels where the majority of the trapped crew had taken shelter. The gravity generators were failing intermittently, causing them to float unexpectedly before crashing back down as the field reasserted itself. "I'm reading life signs about 50 meters ahead," Tivira reported, her scanner painting ghostly outlines on her helmet display, but the corridors blocked by debris. Leo studied the twisted metal and collapsed support beams blocking their path. In the simulation, this would have been a straightforward problem: calculate the structural weak points, apply force in the right places, clear the path. But the real station was far more unpredictable. "The support beam there," Tivira said, pointing to a massive girder wedged diagonally across the corridor. "If we can shift it just a few degrees, it might create enough space to squeeze through." "Might?" Leo asked. "The metal stress patterns are unusual. My readings aren't as clear as they should be." Her frustration bled through their link, the familiar self-doubt creeping back in. Leo moved closer, placing his gloved hand against her arm. Even through the environmental suits, he could feel her tension. "Trust your instincts," he said quietly. "Not your equipment, not your readings. You." Tivira closed her eyes, reaching out with senses that had nothing to do with scanners or data feeds. Through their link, Leo felt her consciousness expand, touching the damaged structure around them, her damaged neural pathways, the ones that had made perfect synchronization impossible, seemed to resonate with the station's own broken systems. "There," she said suddenly, her eyes snapping open. "The beam is holding because of microfractures in the bulkhead behind it. If we apply pressure here," she indicated a spot that looked completely random to Leo, "the fractures will propagate and release the tension." Leo didn't hesitate. He trusted her completely, even when her reasoning seemed to defy conventional engineering principles. They worked together to position their portable force generators, and when they activated them, the massive beam shifted exactly as Tivira had predicted. "How did you know?" Leo asked as they squeezed through the opening. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just felt it, like the station was trying to tell me something." They found the trapped crew members huddled in what had once been a storage bay, their faces gaunt with exhaustion and fear. But as Leo and Tivira began coordinating the evacuation, moving the injured and guiding the others toward safety, something remarkable happened. Their link, which had always been rough and unpredictable, began to settle into a rhythm that was uniquely theirs. Where other teams relied on perfect synchronization, Leo and Tivira developed an almost intuitive understanding of each other's intentions. When Tivira sensed instability in the station's structure, Leo was already moving to compensate. When Leo spotted a potential hazard, Tivira was there to guide the civilians around it before he even spoke. "Last group coming through," Tivira reported as they escorted the final set of survivors toward the docking bay. They had saved 37 of the 43 trapped crew members. The remaining 6 had been lost in the initial cascade failure, their section of the station completely destroyed before the rescue teams had even arrived. It was a better outcome than anyone had dared hope for. As they waited for the final transport shuttle to dock, Leo found himself alone with Tivira in the station's observation lounge. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see the rescue ships beginning their departure, carrying the survivors to safety. "We did good work today," Leo said, settling beside her on one of the few intact benches. "We did," Tivira agreed, but her voice carried a note of wonder, as if she couldn't quite believe it herself. "You know what this means, don't you?" Leo asked. She looked at him questioningly. "It means you're not broken. You never were." Leo reached over to take her hand, their gloved fingers intertwining. "Your neural pathways aren't damaged, they're different. They let you sense things other people can't, make connections that perfect synchronization would miss." Tivira was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. "All these years, I thought I was a failure, that the accident had ruined everything I was supposed to be. Maybe it ruined who you were supposed to be according to other people's expectations," Leo said gently. "But it didn't ruin who you actually are. It just made you you." Tivira turned to face him fully, her storm gray eyes bright with unshed tears. "And who am I?" "Exactly. You're the woman who can sense structural weaknesses that don't show up on scanners. You're the partner who saved 37 lives today. You're the person who taught me that sometimes the best connections aren't the perfect ones. They're the real ones, Leo reached up to activate the release on her helmet, and she did the same for his. In the station's recycled atmosphere, they could finally see each other clearly. "I love you," Leo said simply. "All of you. The brilliant parts, the damaged parts, the parts that make you unique. I love the way your mind works differently from everyone else's. I love your strength and your vulnerability and your refusal to give up even when everyone else had written you off." T-Vira's breath caught. "Leo, I love you too," she whispered, and when she kissed him, it was with the full force of someone who had finally learned to love herself. They made love that night in Leo's quarters, slowly and tenderly, with the kind of intimacy that came from truly knowing another person. T-Vira's pale blue skin was beautiful in the soft light. Her red curls spread across his pillow like flames. When they joined, their mental link deepened in ways that had nothing to do with academy training and everything to do with the genuine connection they had built together. Later, as they lay entwined, T-Vira traced patterns on Leo's chest with her fingertip. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we graduate. We get our assignments. We prove to the galaxy that different doesn't mean lesser." Leo pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "And we do it all together." "Together," T-Vira agreed, and in her voice was the quiet confidence of someone who had finally found where she belonged. Outside their window, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and for the first time in years, T-Vira saw them not as distant and unreachable, but as destinations waiting to be explored by two people who had learned that the most perfect partnerships were the ones built on imperfect but genuine love. 6 months later, when they received their first joint assignment as partners in the Galactic Patrol's Deep Space Rescue Division, Commander Voss's recommendation letter would note, "Grant and Sindel represent the Academy's finest example of how true partnership transcends conventional compatibility. Their unique link has proven invaluable in situations where traditional synchronization fails. They are, without question, perfectly suited for each other." But Leo and T-Vira already knew that. They had learned that perfection wasn't about having no flaws, it was about finding someone who saw your flaws and chose to love you anyway. And in a universe full of perfect connections, theirs was beautifully, wonderfully, perfectly imperfect.